Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Online Smicha. I want to mention a very interesting shaila that was brought up to today's Dayonim in Eretz Yisrael. The story was that a family was looking to get a ride from point A to point B. They were traveling for a chasna, and it was a family, a husband, a wife, a father, a mother, and 5 kids, 5 children. They don't own their own car, so they flagged down a taxi. They flag down this taxi. They're about to go in. The taxi says, "Oh, how many people are you?" He says, "We're 7. I can't take 7. My maximum is 6. So I'm sorry, I can't. It's against the law. That's the limit." So the person, let's call him Ruvain. Ruvain says to the taxi driver, "Listen, I understand it's against the law. I understand you might get a ticket. But I take upon myself, if you get a ticket for the extra person you take in, I will pay that ticket. I'm going to take that risk. If you get a ticket, I will pay for it." All right. So it was a nice fare. So he took 7 people into the car, and he's traveling from point A to point B, let's say from Tel Aviv to Yerushalayim. Once he has 7 people in his car, and he has to travel this distance, the guy speeds it up. And the speed limit, let's say, is 55 miles an hour. He was going 65 miles an hour. Because he was going 65 miles an hour, a cop stops him. A cop stops him and he wants to give him a ticket for speeding, but gives a look in the car and says, "Excuse me, there is more people than you're allowed to have in the car. It's a 6-seater, and you have 7 seats. 8 seats is 8 people in this car. It's illegal. I'm going to give you a ticket for that too." So the question was brought to the Dayanim: does Ruvain have to pay for these tickets? Why? If the taxi driver would have gotten stopped because of only his taking the extra person, that's the responsibility Ruvain took upon himself. But in this case, Ruvain did this to himself. The taxi driver did it himself. If the taxi driver would have driven in the regular speed limit, he would have not been stopped, and my obligations would have been free. It's the taxi driver, by speeding, that caused all this to happen. So maybe I'm free from my responsibility of the additional payment because of the extra people in the car. This was a discussion. So I will tell you how different paskin different. There is a Gemara in Masechta Bava Metzia, Daf Tzadik Gimel, Tzadik Dalid, where it speaks about a royat soin, a shepherd. So the Gemara says that a shepherd has a din like a shomer sachar. Shomer sachar, meaning to say he gets paid for his job, and anything happens to the animals, if it's because of his lack of care, he has to pay. The din of a royat soin, that he's chayiv b'gneva v'aveda. If anything gets stolen, because of my lack of taking care, I have to pay. And obviously, if it's something negligent of mine, then I have to pay. That's the halacha. So the question, the Gemara goes on to say, what would be the din if this royat soin goes and gets into a fight with a bully? And he gets into a fight and he tells him, whoa, you know that I live in this, and I'm a shepherd, and I take care of these and these animals in this and this place. And he spilled he got this bully angry, and he told him where he lives, and he said, "If you come to my place and you start up with me, boy, are you going to be in trouble." Listen, that bully doesn't get afraid from this roya warning him. And sure enough, the bully shows up later on in the day or next day by the farm or the barn, wherever he had the animals, and stole and took some of the animals away. So the question is the roya obligated? And the Gemara clearly says, yes, because this is, even though this is not a normal geneva, you might consider this a einus, somebody coming, a bully from but it's the raya that instigated it. If the raya instigated it, it's his negligence, and he's responsible to pay. So one of the great Rosh Hashivas of today said, this is exactly this case. If all was well, if the guy rode a car and he drove 55, nobody would have stopped him. Because you also have to understand, cops don't stop cars just to check if there's an extra person in there. Only when something's fishy, they stop the car. Who instigated, who brought the cop to come to the car? You, the driver. It's your responsibility. You have to pay. That is one side had to look at this halacha. Other poskim say, on the contrary, it's actually Reuven has to pay. Why? So we find a couple of reasons. Number one is driving fast. We know driving above speed limit is, even though it's against the law, this is what the poskim say, but it's a common thing. It's a common thing. And it's a common thing for cops to stop cars when people driving a little over the speed limit. We're not talking about where the guy went 100 miles an hour. We're talking about the guy who drove like a taxi driver drives, especially a taxi driver in Israel. So when I took upon myself to pay for being stopped for the extra passenger, I already understood that the normal way of driving in Israel is 10 miles above the speed limit or whatever. And I'm willing to take that risk that if I get stopped for that, which is a common thing that people do, and it's a common thing that cops stop cars for, I'm in my acknowledgement that I will pay for the extra passenger. I understood that there could be this opportunity that he will speed. Another reason is brought. Since when I gave my word that I'm going to pay for the extra passenger, I didn't connect it to any conditions. I said, if you get a knas, if you get a ticket for the extra passenger, I will pay. No strings attached. So in my words, in my commitment, you can't free me from my commitment because of other reasons. In my commitment, I made it sound that I'm going to be obligated either way. Another reason is the fact that this person drove fast should pater me from paying. Some place can say that's not even a valid claim. Why? Because we see many times that cops stop cars for other reasons. There's plenty of times that cops stop cars because people are not wearing seatbelts. It's not necessarily that this taxi driver, because of his speeding, caused the second claim. There's always roadblocks. There's always road stops. You can never know. And again, it's part of the cheshbon I said before. When I committed to pay that extra fine, I had to take that all in consideration. That maybe a cop is going to stop for a seatbelt, for a broken a light or something. And once I committed, I'm obligated to pay. Another svara is, we find that the technical way of life is that if you get stopped by a police officer and you have two fines, you don't have insurance and your lights weren't working, you're speeding and whatever it is. If there's more than one ticket you're getting, sometimes the cop says, I will only, you're supposed to be getting 1 or 2 or 3 tickets. Forget about the smaller ones. I'll just give you the bigger ticket, and that will cover everything. That will cover everything. So one of the poskim says, let's boil it down like this. If that's the situation, and he got both tickets, he got one for the extra passenger and one for the speeding, whichever one is the more expensive one, that's the one he should pay. That's the difference between the extra passenger and the speeding. If there is, that's the one the father has to pay.